Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving deep today into Canada's latest immigration shakeup.
Oh, yeah.
We've got a ton of articles and policy documents, even some expert opinions, all on the recent changes to Canada's immigration levels plan for 2025 to 2027. So if you're thinking about moving to Canada or just interested in immigration policy, stick around. You might be surprised by what you learn.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild ride. The government originally wanted to welcome 500,000 immigrants in 2025, but they've dropped that down to 395,000.
Whoa, hold on. They cut it down
By how much?
a full 21%. Big drop.
That's a huge change. It's like planning a big party and then uninviting a fifth of the guests. Why the sudden change of
It
plans?
seems like a few things are going on. Worries about housing, pressure on social services, maybe even some politics mixed in there.
That makes sense, but cutting immigration targets like that is bound to have some big impacts.
Oh, absolutely.
So break it down for me. Where are these cuts hitting hardest?
Well, the reductions are spread across the main categories: economic immigration, family reunification,
Mm.
and refugee programs. But here's the thing. Within economic immigration, things are going in opposite directions.
Opposite direction. Now that you mention it, I did notice some weird ups and downs in the economic immigration numbers.
Yeah, so overall, economic immigration is down by 23%.
Okay.
But federal high-skilled programs, those are actually going up.
Interesting.
It's the Provincial Nominee Program, or PNP as it's called. That's taken a major hit.
How major are we talking?
A 54% cut. Huge.
Wow, that's a massive drop. So what's the logic here? Boosting federal high-skilled programs, but then slashing the PNP like that. It looks like Canada's trying to attract specific talent in areas with big labor shortages, especially healthcare and trades. Looks like they're prioritizing filling those immediate needs in the Canadian workforce.
So it's all about matching immigration to specific economic needs. But what does this mean for someone hoping to immigrate through the PNP? Is it even possible anymore? It's going to be a lot harder, that's for sure. The PNP was already a popular way to immigrate, and now there are far fewer spots.
Right.
And there's another important detail. The government is really emphasizing in-Canada applicants for these federal high-skilled programs.
Oh, so if you're already working in Canada, maybe on a temporary permit,
Yeah.
or as a student, you're in a much better position than someone applying from overseas. Logistically, I get it, but it also seems a little unfair.
You've hit on a key point there. There's definitely a worry that these changes are creating a system that favors people already in Canada. But before we go down that rabbit hole, let's focus on one specific program that's seen major changes: Express Entry.
Okay, yeah, Express Entry. Canada's big program for skilled workers. Everyone always talks about their CRS score.
Yeah.
And getting those invitations to apply. What's changed there?
Well, they've introduced something called category-based selections. And right now, they're only prioritizing invitations for people in healthcare, trades, or those with strong French skills.
Hold on. So other skilled professionals, like engineers, IT people, scientists, they're basically out of luck. That seems really limiting.
There are definitely concerns about what happens to talent in other sectors that Canada also needs. It's like saying we need all sorts of ingredients for a good meal, but right now we're only accepting carrots, potatoes, and salt.
Haha, I like that analogy. So what's with this sudden focus on French? Is Canada trying to become the next France?
Not quite. French is an official language in Canada, and while it's mostly spoken in Quebec, the government wants to encourage bilingualism everywhere. This focus on French in Express Entry is part of that.
Interesting. So if you speak French, you've basically got a free pass, at least for now. But what about aspiring entrepreneurs, the people who want to start businesses in Canada? How are they doing in this new environment?
Not so great, honestly. The federal business category has been cut by 66.7%.
Ouch, that's a big hit. So what does this mean, practically speaking, for someone who wants to, let's say, start a tech company in Toronto?
Basically, it means longer processing times, more obstacles to overcome, and a lot of uncertainty. For those looking at the startup visa program, the wait time could easily be over 5 years.
5 years. That's an eternity in the startup world. I can't imagine how frustrating that must be for these aspiring entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. The long wait and shrinking quotas are definitely discouraging. But there is a small upside. Essential applicants in the business category can now get open work permits so they can live and work in Canada while they wait.
Okay, so at least they're not completely stuck. They can contribute to the economy while waiting. It's a small win, but a win nonetheless. But all these changes make me wonder, is the government just rearranging things? Without really solving the problems, are they creating more problems than they're fixing?
That's the million-dollar question. And in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore some of those potential unintended consequences. Because as you know, when you change one part of a complex system, you often create ripples that spread far and wide. So we talked about express entry and business immigration, some pretty big changes there. Yeah, definitely.
But let's not forget about another important aspect of immigration: families and refugees.
Right, because with all the talk about the economy and jobs, it's easy to forget that immigration is about more than just filling positions. It's about people, connecting with each other, building lives together.
Exactly.
So what's happening with family reunification?
Well, the target for family reunification has been reduced from 118,000 down to 94,500.
Okay.
It's about an 8% decrease.
Okay.
Might not seem as big as the other cuts, but for families separated by borders and paperwork, even a small percentage change means longer waits and more uncertainty.
Yeah, I can imagine. Waiting years to be reunited with your family, not knowing when you can finally see them again, it's got to be incredibly tough.
It is. And with this reduction, it means longer processing times for spouse, partner, and child sponsorships. And for those wanting to sponsor their parents or grandparents, the news is even worse.
Well, the government hasn't opened the pool for parent and grandparent sponsorships
Yeah.
since 2020. And it's not even clear if they will in 2025.
So it's not just about the numbers, it's the waiting, the not knowing. It must be really stressful.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the refugee program. How are these changes impacting people fleeing persecution, seeking safety in Canada?
The target for the refugee program has been cut too, by 20%, from 72,750 down to 58,350. This affects both government-assisted refugees and those who make claims from inside Canada.
We always hear about a huge backlog in processing those claims. Won't this just make things worse, make people wait even longer?
It's a big concern. As of late 2024, the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada, they already had a backlog of over 250,000 refugee claims. With fewer spots and limited resources, it's very likely those processing times will only get longer.
I read a story recently about a family from Syria. They had been waiting over 3 years just to have their refugee claim processed. 3 years living in limbo, unable to work, to really rebuild their lives. I can't imagine that kind of stress.
Yeah. The human cost of these delays is huge. These are people who have often fled unimaginable hardship, trauma, and they're left in this state of uncertainty. They can't move forward with their lives.
It's like they escaped one horrible situation, only to be trapped in another. It makes me wonder, are these cuts to the refugee program pushing more people towards making claims as a last resort? I mean, if legal ways to immigrate are too hard or limited, people might feel they have no other choice. But to seek asylum, even if their chances aren't good?
There's definitely a possibility. As immigration policies get tighter, it's more likely that people will turn to any avenue available, even if it's risky.
It's a complicated situation. So, stepping back, looking at the bigger picture, what does this all mean for people hoping to immigrate to Canada? Seems like there are both positives and negatives.
Definitely a mixed bag. Some people will benefit from the changes. Those with in-demand skills, like in healthcare, in trades, and those already working in Canada. But for many others, the path to immigration just got much harder.
And we can't forget that these policies, these statistics, they're about real people. With real hopes and dreams, their lives are directly impacted.
You're absolutely right. Immigration is more than just numbers. It's about human lives, families, and the future. In the last part of our deep dive, we're going to hear from some experts, and we'll try to weigh those potential benefits against the concerns. And we'll look at the long-term effects on Canada's immigration system and their reputation as a welcoming and diverse country.
All right, so we've talked about the numbers, we've talked about the different categories, and we've talked about some potential problems. What are the experts saying about all this? Are these changes a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, the expert opinions are all over the place, kind of like Canada's population itself. There's no clear agreement, which shows you how complex this issue is. Some experts think these changes are necessary, like a correction to get things back on track, a way to make sure immigration helps Canada's economy right now and addresses those worker shortages.
Right, so the idea is to make sure that new immigrants have the skills to succeed. That would benefit everyone.
Exactly. And some experts say that focusing on people already in Canada just makes sense.
Yeah.
These folks are already part of Canadian society. They get the culture, and they've already proven they can contribute.
I see the logic there. But it still raises some questions for me, like, what about fairness? What about people who dream of coming to Canada but haven't had the chance yet. It's like saying, welcome to Canada, but only if you're already here.
That's a big concern for a lot of the experts. They worry that these changes might accidentally create a system that favors the privileged and excludes talented people from different backgrounds who could bring new ideas and skills to Canada.
It's a tough balance, wanting to fill job gaps, but also wanting a system that feels fair to everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's another worry that came up in our research, that maybe the government rushed into this.
Oh.
Like they were reacting to political pressure or public opinion instead of thinking long term.
So it's like putting out a fire instead of building a fireproof house. What are the experts suggesting instead?
A lot of them say we need a more thoughtful approach to immigration policy,
Okay.
one that includes everyone who's involved: immigration lawyers, settlement agencies, community groups, even economists and labor market people. It's about bringing everyone together to create a system that works for now and for the future.
So it's about looking at the whole picture, not just the economy, but also the social and humanitarian sides of immigrating.
Right. One expert said it really well. They say Canada needs an immigration system that's not just efficient, but also compassionate and forward-looking. It's about finding that balance between economic needs and humanitarian needs.
Yeah.
A system that shows what Canada really stands for.
That's a great way to put it. So as we wrap up our deep dive here, what are the main things you hope people take away from this? Canada's immigration system is definitely changing. So where do we go from here?
I think the biggest takeaway is that there are no easy answers when it comes to immigration. It's complicated, with a lot of different opinions. But what's good is that people are talking about it. And experts are pushing for a better system, one that's fair and makes sense.
And I think we need to remember that these changes are just one moment in time. Immigration policies are always changing, so it's important to stay informed. And to be part of the conversation, we need to keep asking questions, challenging ideas, and pushing for policies that work and are compassionate.
Absolutely. And the most important thing to remember is that behind all the numbers and policies, there are real people. Their lives are changed by these decisions. It's their stories, their dreams, their contributions that make Canada what it is.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Canada's immigration system. It's a complex topic, but hopefully you have a better understanding of it now. And as always, we encourage you to keep learning. Check out the sources we've provided and come to your own conclusions. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep those conversations going.